Fraud. Let that word just set in for a minute. And it's front and center in Tim Walz's Minnesota, where a massive scandal involving taxpayer dollars being funneled to al-Shabaab's terrorists is unraveling.
There's been a sprawling web of schemes exploiting state programs to the tune of possibly $1 billion or even more, according to the U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, and it's prompting state lawmakers to call for a federal investigation.
Minnesota State Senator Jordan Rasmusson joins us now. Senator, thank you. Why did the state feel they needed to call in the federal authorities? Why didn't you guys deal with this at a local level or a state level?
Governor Tim Walz has turned Minnesota into America's fraud capital. And we've seen upwards of $1 billion go to criminal networks. And we're concerned right now that those dollars are going to al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization operating in Somalia. And so that's why we asked the U.S. Attorney to investigate this, to track this money.
So where does it go from here? And how long are we talking about? Because the one program, the Minnesota Medicaid Housing Stabilization Program, that it was kind of the root of this fraud, and we're looking at the money, how it just, the spending just mushroomed from an initial cost of about $2.5 million to just the first 6 months of this year to $61 million. So that's about 120 annualized there. That was the root of it all, and it was just runaway spending. So it didn't take that long for this fraud to germinate and metastasize.
We have seen this network of criminals go from human services program to human services program to the point where the United States Attorney believes that most of the dollars in that housing support program went to criminals. And that's why Governor Walz had to admit that he couldn't protect taxpayer dollars for that program and just shut it down.
Senator, I want to just get some clarity here for our viewers. The money that's being spent is state money or federal money?
Both. We as a state have to put tax dollars in to get the federal Medicaid match. And so unfortunately, the entire country is on the hook for the failures of the Walz administration.
So I would be remiss not to double down a little bit and ask why the state legislature didn't notice what Dagan pointed out a minute ago, which is the massive increase year after year after year, and why the state hasn't done something about it on its own and is waiting for the federal government to come in.
We have put forward as legislative Republicans an anti-fraud package, part of which has passed the Minnesota Senate, but Governor Walz and legislative Democrats have stopped it from going into law because they don't want accountability for the actions and inactions of their state agencies.
Were people called racist and bigots when it was first raised that the money was being misappropriated or misused or funneled to questionable individuals?
What we heard from the Walz administration was that fraud wasn't occurring. It was only maybe a percentage point or less of these programs. And now if you total up all of the fraud that we know of, the U.S. Attorney's Office under Joe Biden said that it's upwards of $1 billion of taxpayer money that could potentially be going overseas to help fund terrorism.
Do I have this right, just for clarity? The deficit in the state of Minnesota, the great state of Minnesota, is $6 billion?
We started this year with a $6 billion deficit. And when Governor Walz and the Democrats had complete control, we had an $18 billion surplus, and they spent that and by increasing state government spending by 40% over one budget cycle. And so we've seen now this spending hangover that taxpayers are paying for.
They probably just thought it was a misplaced comma. I joke, but Marcus gets angry when there's that kind of
Well, it's just irresponsible, and I think everybody's accountable for stuff like this.
Indeed. Jordan Rasmusson, thank you so much. Great to see you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for having me.